Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and of course, as always, thank you so much for being here. We've got a good topic today, so let's get right to it. Those of you who have had a paranormal experience, what happened, and what made you believe that it was paranormal, please remember to like, share, say hi, and subscribe. My dad died when I was 13. I remember he used to wear this cologne that was just his. I never met anyone else who had it. I smelled it twice after he passed, both times I was home alone. It was a quick inhale on both occasions, but I know it was him. I also used to hear footsteps going down the stairs of my old home on some early Saturday mornings, thinking it was my mom, but when I would get up to use the bathroom, I used hers, and you had to pass through her bedroom to get to it. She was still in bed. My mom said my dad would come to her bed and would leave in the morning, so maybe that's something. My dad, I hadn't spoken to him in years, appeared in my dream and seemed to show me that I would marry my then boyfriend and said goodbye. He died that night, and I didn't find out about it till the next morning. The first thing I said was, I saw him last night. I did marry my now husband, and we have 2 kids. It's been 8 years since my dad died. Me and my friend, we took insane amounts of DXM. We were roommates. While we were laying on the ground with eyes pointed toward the ceiling, we both had open eye visuals. When I started talking what I was seeing, he told me he sees the same hallucination that I have. Firstly, I couldn't really tell if he was telling the truth, but then he started to describe exactly what I saw at the very moment for quite a few minutes. It was many years ago. Can't tell exactly what it was about. I'm clean for over 6 years, but I still remember how much of a WTF moment it was when we both found out about this. Possibly. I don't know if I can properly describe this, but I'll try my best. I woke up in the middle of the night and really needed to go to the bathroom. This was when I was a teenager and still living with my parents. The bathroom is on the bottom floor of the house and I'm on the top floor. I walk out of my room into the pitch black and head into the hall that leads toward the stairs. Once I get about 6 feet from the stairs, I become overwhelmed with the most horrible feelings I've ever experienced in my life. It just came out of nowhere and built up in a matter of seconds, starting from nothing and forming into this all-encompassing, suffocating feeling of what I describe as a mixture of primal fear, hatred, and anger. The whole atmosphere just felt so sickeningly angry and hateful, I can't stress that part enough. Alarm bells were sounding off like crazy in my head, telling me to head back to my room and close the door. I was looking down the staircase at this point, and it was so dark that I couldn't see the bottom, but it felt like something truly ugly and horrible was waiting down there right at the base of the steps. I remember that my thoughts weren't totally silent at this point. I was just frozen still like a deer that is sensing a predator nearby. I backed away and slowly walked into my room and shut the door. The feeling gradually disappeared the further I got from the staircase, and I felt safe in my room. I stayed in my room all night and didn't fall asleep because I needed to use the bathroom so bad. Never heard any sounds at all that night. No movement outside my door in the living room downstairs, nothing at all. It took a few hours for the sun to rise, and when it did, I soon heard the sounds of my parents getting ready for work in the kitchen, so I left my room and walked back to the stairs. Everything felt totally normal now. I walked downstairs, saw my dad pouring a cup of coffee, and then I speed walked to the bathroom. That was the end of it. There were no signs of a break-in, no signs that anyone was at the bottom of the stairs at all during the night. I never told my parents. There's no logical reason why I should have felt that way. I do think it probably was some sort of psychological phenomenon brought on by something, but I can say for sure that it wasn't an afraid of the dark feeling. Like I said, it felt like I was in the presence of something that absolutely hated me. I've been stalked by a mountain lion before and felt primal fear, the same fear that comes from being afraid of the dark, but not a feeling of hatred and anger. Animals do not hate their prey. This was like the feeling of something sentient and intelligent near me, wanting to hurt me for hateful reasons. I never had anything like that happen before or since. If you've ever had a night terror or sleep paralysis, it felt kind of like that, except I was 100% awake. Well, you trusted your gut, which is never a bad thing to do, regardless of the reason, paranormal or otherwise. But holding your pee in all night, not as good. You didn't have a Gatorade bottle laying around? Not that I would ever do that. It was late at night, but I was awake playing a game and got hungry. I was living in the basement, which was basically an unfinished basement except for my bedroom. I got up from my chair and went to my bedroom door. I opened the door, and for some reason that night all the lights went off in the basement. We usually kept them on. The only thing I could see was the light coming from the top of the stairway from our kitchen. I've never been scared of the dark or that basement before. I immediately got bad vibes from across the basement towards a corner. It was like I got punched with fear. I was 100% that someone or something was in the darkness and meant me harm. I froze up and was terrified until I backed into my room, slammed and locked the door. I turned my bedroom lights on and turned down my TV and just sat and listened for a good 30 minutes. Didn't hear a sound, and eventually the fear slowly faded away. Once I could hear my family moving around above me, I ran upstairs and told them about it. My dad checked the windows and everything was fine. No one broke in, but I still swear that something was in the basement with me. Shit was not cool. I've never experienced it again. I was traveling with my family in Europe, and my mom and I went to some old monastery. There was this stone or marble closet room in the courtyard with a big heavy stone door mausoleum. I got a weird uncomfortable feeling when I approached it, and when I stepped inside I got this terrible sense of claustrophobia, like the door would close and trap me inside. I stepped out and walked away. The feeling kept following me. I asked my mom if this place was giving her weird vibes. She said, "Yeah, really weird. I wasn't going to say anything, but you brought it up. Let's get out of here. I think a monk might have been trapped in that closet and died." Your story reminded me of that because it wasn't anything tangible, visible, or auditory. Just that deep-seated feeling in the pit of your stomach or the back of your mind. I might not have given it as much thought if my mom hadn't had the same experience as me. In the middle of the day, my great-grandmother appeared in my room. She told me she loved me and that my dad was going to need a lot of help because she was gone. She was the one that raised my dad. He called her mom. I don't remember the whole conversation, but it was over 40 years ago. But we talked for a while. My dad popped his head in my room to ask who I was talking to, and she was gone. I told him. He chuckled, thinking I was pretending. 5 minutes later, he got the call from his uncle, more like brother, because he was only a few years older, that grandmom had passed about half an hour ago. When he calmed down, he remembered our conversation and sort of freaked out. That time in my grandparents' house, I was like 6 to 7. My grandfather died. After that, that's when I started to feel weird. My grandparents' paternal house was an old one. My dad said his grandparents also died there, so of course it's a chain of ghost stories and paranormal events that are told by people. But living there, I never really had any experience. Anyway, after my grandpa died, that's when I first felt like something's off. It gets chilly, and sometimes in the middle of the night I hear chains and chairs being moved. Made me wonder why my parents don't think this is weird, so I shrugged it. A few years later, same stuff happening. Chairs moving in the middle of the night, and occasionally the feeling of being watched. Then one time I was 8, I was pretty sure I saw someone standing next to a wall. It was dark since it's nighttime and it's 9 to 10 p.m. I can still remember it vividly. Only like a quarter of it I can see, since I couldn't really make sense of it first time. But 3/4 of it is kinda within the wall or behind it. I wasn't scared, but I stared at it for a solid 10 minutes till my mom called me to sleep. It was a dark, shadowy figure. It was short and had a woman's body figure, with its back facing me. My parents didn't believe me when I told them, although I am pretty sure they did believe me that I saw that thing, but just denied so that my little brother wouldn't get scared. Then a few days later, my mom told me, "I think you did see it, but don't be scared if I tell you that I saw someone too. A few weeks after your grandfather's funeral, I saw someone climbing up the stairs, but only that. The top half is already upstairs, so I couldn't see who it was. The bottom half is the only thing I saw climbing up the stairs. It looked like a man wearing black pants. I'm pretty sure it was my grandpa. He used to wear those black pants." So if your family owns this home and it's occupied by benevolent spirits of your ancestors, that could be fine. A little creepy, but okay, I guess. But what if you ever sold it and new people moved in? Would they be freaked out? Or were your ancestors just nice ghosts? My mom came into my room late one night when I was 8 to inform me that my grandmother had just died in my dad's arms in hospice. I didn't tell my mom that I already knew because I'd woken up seconds before and saw my grandmother standing over my bed before she waved goodbye and then was gone. It wasn't really on the paranormal side of things, but I had a really scary encounter with a Sasquatch back a couple months ago while on the family farm here in Parkland County, Alberta. It was around 4 a.m. and I had my chainsaw, my logging chains, and my small Kubota ready to clear the fence line. Things were very quiet for a good 40 minutes. Not long after, I heard what I thought was clapping. I thought my dad or cousin was out there being sarcastic because I was on break, but I yelled to whatever it was to quit it because it went on for 4 minutes. As soon as I yelled, everything went back to being quiet. I continued working, but not long after I heard a howl and a low growl from behind me near the water lot, deep water in a field. It was mostly trees, but I assumed it was a timber wolf or a wild dog. But I remembered the sightings near Seba Beach, so I worked in complete caution. It went back to quiet for another 4 to 5 hours. I was then heading to grab a beer or a drink for lunch. As I did so, something made me stop and stay still. I somehow felt something breathing on me, but nothing was around me. It scared me to the point I was there sitting for a good 15 minutes. As soon as I calmed down, I left the area and headed back to the house, which was 5 kilometers away from where I was, deep in the woods. I'm kind of lucky, to be honest. As Muslims, we do believe in Jinn, not ghosts. We don't believe that they are spirits, but they are another species, same as us humans, but their normal physical form is not visible nor interactable. They are, however, able to mess with us, either by sound or movement or shape-shifting. I was in my room one day when a plastic Mentos gum container was thrown at my face very hard. Of course, I was alone, and I was already used to their BS because since our house is more than 40 years old, we do get a lot of activities. Sometimes it's children crying loudly at 3 a.m. or shit falling. One time I was home alone in the second floor and heard the front door open, and I also heard the sound of my parents talking loudly and my brother laughing. I came down to nothing. Front door was locked, but the lights were on for some reason. And also, sometimes when I try to sleep, I hear the sound of a girl humming straight into my ear, and it feels like there is something warm there. My mother also told me stories about activities before I was born. She has them as snakes before. She was thrown with slippers in the basement before. My sister also told me that they saw their toys moving before, which I found really funny because I can only imagine it as Toy Story. When I was around 7, I saw a man glowing blue sitting at my bed rubbing my head. I screamed and ran to my mom and described the man, and she said it was my Uncle Toot, who used to watch over me as a baby before he passed. Oh, I have 2. One may not count. When I was a toddler, 2-ish, I told my father that he had to listen to me because I was his mother. He joked and said, "Okay, when is your birthday?" Apparently, I gave him the correct date and told him about some clock in the basement. They went and pulled it out. It was his grandfather's clock, and it hadn't worked for years. He pulled it out, and it was running again. The other was on my grandfather's funeral. While we were at the funeral, we get a call from her neighbor asking if she's okay. It was a gated retirement community, so people are constantly looking out for each other. I guess while we were at the funeral, her lights started going on and off like crazy for 2 to 3 minutes, then all shut off. Never happened again. In my dorm at like 2 or 3 a.m., woke up and saw what appeared to be a person standing by my sink, and I just kind of froze staring at it with a really bad gut feeling. I managed to turn my lamp on, and I couldn't get back to sleep. I was super freaked out, and couldn't figure out anything that could have made the same shape. Shortly after my family and I moved to where we currently live, I saw my dog behind me in the mirror. He had died 2 years prior to this happening. There was no possible way it could have been a shadow. He was a black lab, since nothing was in the center of my room where the shadow was, and everything was by a wall in my room. There's also multiple times I felt weight by me, like the size of a cat or dog. We've lost both, and nothing was sitting where the weight was. I was having sleep paralysis. My bedroom had one window which faced the back of the house. The back had a large field, the woods. It was very dark. I noticed my sleep paralysis due to odd events. My cat would sleep with me. He would come to my bed after midnight, and I would be aware of him jumping on my bed while I slept. Then my car died. One night I felt him jump on my bed, which was okay until I remembered he was dead. I tried to look, but I couldn't move. This isn't a ghost story. Things like this happened, but different causes. I was having nightmares at this time. The dreams were normal until I felt people with black eyes. The sight always frightens me awake. The eyes held this malevolence. Then I would be paralyzed. I broke my window in the bedroom, afraid of angering my parents. I named a thick fiber board between the frame and the window. Summer kicked in hard a while later. The wood of the frame swelled in the summer humidity. The window was stuck closed like a drum. I couldn't open it up. While sleeping, I heard this loud, tearing sound. It sounded like a giant vacuum. I tried to look, but I was paralyzed. Frozen, I struggled to move. Then I moved my tongue, which broke the paralysis. I sat up and looked at my window. It was just wind sucking air through a tip in the fiber board. I thought, oh, that's all. And played back down. Then I thought, roaring wind ripped the thick board. I sat back up, and the wind was gone. The curtain was sucked into the rip. I had to use 2 hands to pull the curtain free. Then I had to kick the fiber board to pull it apart, and open the window. There was not but a wind outside. I thought the paralysis was just a thing with my body and mind. For the longest time, I couldn't directly remember the event and the other things that happened. It was like a memory with no connection to my work consciousness. I only stumbled on them, and I still feel more happened, but don't reach the memories. When I was married, my wife said, "I've almost never seen you sleep. When I go to sleep, you are awake. When I wake up, you're awake. When I rarely catch you sleeping, you wake up screaming like I'm going to murder you." I was unaware. Everything, even the screaming, I kind of know that I'm the lightest sleeper, but totally unaware I scream if you catch me sleeping. I feel that things happened back when I was a kid, but I just can't remember them. I think they're still happening. I was out of work due to this pandemic. So I was home alone while my wife was working. Then I noticed there was no sound. I could hear my breathing, but no environmental sounds. I went outside, and it was the same. I was going to talk to my neighbors, but didn't want to seem strange. That's all I remember. No context of when this happened, not the day or the month, not what happened after. It's like I just stumbled on the memory a year later. It's like it happened, but I only thought of it a year later. I'm not a medical professional, but in my basic narrator opinion, I would say maybe sign up for like a sleep study, maybe sleep apnea, or something even worse. I've never been a paranormal perceptive person, never had a paranormal experience in my life, but everyone around me seems to have them. My grandmother, my aunt and uncle, my mother, wife, and even my 7-year-old daughter have had some sort of occurrence. I believe myself to be a very perceptive person. I live in the moment, I have to. My job has too many variables to be daydreaming. If I'm not present, I might get hit by heavy equipment or get crippled, or worse, I could die. I'm not a skeptic person. I choose to believe my loved ones about what they see or feel, but in my 34 years of life, I've never experienced anything like that. But the closest one I had was when I experienced sleep paralysis for the first time. I knew what it was and what it was all about, so I didn't get scared looking at the decrepit corpse of a woman in a white dress with long black hair floating right above me. I played along just to see what happened. Tried to look her in the eye, but there was no face, just her hair dancing in the wind. So I got pissed off and yelled, "Effing stop that." I couldn't move, but after a few tries I did. I'm a light sleeper. But I'm a lucid dreamer too, so I have a few tricks to force myself awake. As soon as I was coming to, she disintegrated in the wind. I was like, huh? So that's what that is like. Never had another occurrence after that. It was the story about when I lived with my family. I used to just put my clothing in a box that was in front of the bathroom before I took a shower. And I, of course, recognized those clothings in the box when I got out of the shower, and I just left for the lunch out. When I come back home, it happened. Those clothes were mysteriously gone and hung on the laundry bar. Not to mention, when I slept and woke up the next morning, those clothes used to be even put in my closet. Can you believe that? I've never seen that happen after I left my home and started living alone.